Josh was used to long nights. Working the graveyard shift at a 24-hour diner wasn't glamorous, but it paid the bills. Most nights were quiet, just the occasional trucker grabbing coffee or a few regulars who couldn't sleep. But tonight was different. It was nearing 3 in the morning, the dead zone when time felt like it stretched on forever. Josh was cleaning up behind the counter, half listening to the dull hum of the TV in the corner when the bell above the door chimed. He looked up and saw her, pale, disheveled, with a wild look in her eyes. The woman shuffled in like she was lost, wearing a thin dress that didn't seem warm enough for the cold night outside. Her hair hung in damp strands over her face. "Can I help you?" Josh asked, feeling a prickling at the back of his neck. She looked wrong, like she wasn't supposed to be there. The woman slowly lifted her head, her wide, unblinking eyes locking onto his. "I need help." Her voice was barely a whisper, and her lips trembled as she spoke. Okay. Do you need to use the phone or something?" Josh offered, feeling uneasy. The woman didn't move. She just stood there, staring, her hands trembling. "I'm lost. Can't find my way back," she muttered, her voice cracking like she was on the verge of tears. Josh's stomach tightened. "Back to where?" She stepped closer, and Josh noticed something unsettling about her. The air around her felt off, like the temperature had dropped 5 degrees in an instant. He could see his breath now. "Please, help me," she whispered again. This time her voice sounded wrong, like 2 voices layered on top of each other. Before he could respond, she reached out and grabbed his arm. Her touch was ice cold, so cold it felt like her fingers burned through his skin. Josh yanked his arm away instinctively, his pulse pounding in his ears. "Lady, you need to..." Suddenly, she was gone. Just gone. The diner door was still closed, the bell above it silent. Josh stood there, frozen, staring at the empty space where she'd been. Had she even come in? His heart was racing, and he felt a wave of nausea rise in his chest. He must be sleep-deprived. No one just disappears like that. Rubbing his eyes, he went back behind the counter, telling himself it was just a hallucination. But when he grabbed a cloth to wipe down the counter, he saw it, a handprint. Clear as day, but not just any handprint. This one looked smeared, as if her hand had been covered in thick, dark soot. Suddenly, the bell above the door chimed again. Josh whipped around, but no one was there. A creaking sound echoed through the diner, and Josh's heart slammed against his chest. The lights above flickered, buzzing loudly as if the electricity was struggling to keep up. Then, something else. A scraping noise, faint but distinct, like fingernails dragging along the walls. Slowly, the sound grew closer. Josh's throat tightened. "Hello?" He called out, his voice cracking. No answer. The scraping stopped, replaced by soft, slow footsteps, barely audible, but moving toward him. He backed up against the counter, his eyes scanning the diner, trying to pinpoint where the sound was coming from. The air felt thick now, heavy, like something unseen was pressing down on him. Suddenly, the TV behind the counter flickered to static, and a voice, her voice, whispered through the white noise. "Help." Josh's blood ran cold. He reached for his phone, desperate to call someone, anyone. His hands trembled as he unlocked it, but the screen went black. Dead. He stared at it, heart pounding, when something caught his eye. In the reflection of the phone screen, just over his shoulder, he saw her, the woman, standing inches away, her face pale and expressionless, eyes wide and hollow. Her mouth opened slightly, and black liquid began to drip down her chin. She was right behind him. Josh spun around, but the space was empty. He was alone, or at least he thought he was. The bell chimed once again, but this time it wasn't the front door. It came from the back of the diner, near the bathrooms. Josh's legs felt like they were glued to the floor, but he forced himself to move, creeping toward the back hallway. The door to the bathroom was slightly ajar. He pushed it open, heart hammering in his chest. And there, smeared on the bathroom mirror, were the words written in that same black soot-like substance. "I'm still here." Josh stumbled backward, breath shallow and panicked. He ran back to the counter, grabbed his keys, and bolted out of the diner. The next day, Josh tried explaining it to his manager and coworkers, but no one believed him. They laughed it off, saying he must have been too tired. But when Josh walked back into the diner, he couldn't shake the feeling that he wasn't alone. Every time the bell jingled, every flicker of the lights, he felt her, watching. And when he looked in the mirror that night before his shift, he swore he could still see her, standing just behind him.